Chosen one. Something around you has been shifting in a way you can feel, but can't fully explain. And it's been happening quietly, slowly, almost like the universe has been trying to warn you without scaring you. A certain person close to you, someone you interact with often, someone who should feel familiar, has started giving off signals that don't match who they were before. Their energy doesn't land the same. Their presence feels off, like their timing is delayed, like their expressions and reactions don't line up with the moment you're in. You've noticed how they sometimes stare a little too long, how their face locks for a second before resetting, how their tone changes mid-sentence, as if they forget which version of themselves they were supposed to be. You brushed it off as stress or mood swings, but your intuition keeps tugging at you, telling you this is something else, something calculated. The truth is, people don't glitch like that. People don't switch frequencies, but shapeshifters do. And the closer this one stands to you, the harder it's becoming for them to maintain the mask. They mimic your emotions, copy your language, match your habits, yet it never feels natural. It feels rehearsed, forced, programmed. You've even caught them acting differently depending on who else is in the room, almost as if they recalibrate their personality for each audience. That's not human inconsistency. That's identity simulation. Someone close to you has been blending in, studying you, taking your reactions and mirroring them back with just enough accuracy to seem normal, until moments where the facade slips for a second and you see something cold, blank, or unfamiliar behind their eyes. And that's where this story begins. Not with monsters in the shadows, but with an impostor standing right next to you, pretending they belong there. Chosen one. Before we move into part 2, I need you to understand something very clearly. Messages like this don't appear in your path by coincidence. If you're still here, still reading, still locked in, it means your intuition has already recognized that this isn't random content. It's confirmation. And when a message hits your spirit like this, when it exposes something your mind hasn't fully processed, but your energy has felt for months, there's a reason. So here's what I want you to do if this is resonating with that deeper part of you. Activate a super thanks. Not because you owe anything. Not because this is about money. It's about alignment. Super thanks is a digital way of saying, I'm here. I'm awake. I'm not running from the truth anymore. It's energetically marking the moment you stop doubting what you sensed and start acknowledging it. Think of it as planting a flag on your timeline, claiming the chapter where your awareness rose high enough to detect the shapeshifters, the imposters, the energy parasites who thought you would never catch on. People who live in lies can't align with truth, but chosen ones, we align instantly. So if this message is doing something inside your chest, if your intuition is waking up, if your mind feels sharper than usual right now, that's your confirmation. Use super thanks as your signal to the universe that you're stepping into clarity instead of confusion, that you choose awareness over attachment. Chosen one. The first signs were subtle enough that anyone else would have ignored them, but not you. Your spirit registered things long, before your mind did. You noticed how their voice would shift mid-conversation, not emotionally, but structurally, almost like the cadence belonged to a different person entirely. Sometimes it was too calm, sometimes too sharp, sometimes delayed by half a second, as if they were processing your words through an internal filter before responding. Then there were their eyes. Humans blink with rhythm, with flow, with emotion. But this person, their blinks were inconsistent, either too slow, too calculated, or strangely absent, as if they were trying to remember how a normal blink worked. Their pupils held a strange focus, like someone observing you rather than engaging with you. And the longer you spent time with them, the more you noticed small errors in their personality. They would forget stories they told you. They would laugh at the wrong moments. They would react to things you never said. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was inconsistency, because each version of them wasn't synced with the last. Then came the mimicry. They started copying your phrases, adopting your style, mirroring your emotions, but not in a natural way, more like they were studying you, rehearsing you, practicing the correct version of themselves to stay close without detection. And every time you pulled back, they adjusted instantly, like they were recalibrating their entire identity based on your reactions. That is not normal behavior. That is not human spontaneity. That is adaptive imitation, the survival mechanic of a shapeshifter trying to maintain access to someone whose energy threatens its disguise. And you didn't imagine it. You sensed the cracks in the mask because the real version of them never existed. Chosen one. Once your awareness sharpened, you started seeing patterns that were always there but hidden behind your empathy. Shapeshifters don't reveal themselves through big events. They slip through the cracks of everyday moments. Think back. Every time you tested their honesty, even lightly, their reaction was disproportionate, either overly defensive or suspiciously calm, like someone running an emotional script instead of genuinely responding. They repeated certain gestures too consistently, almost like behavioral loops, tilting their head in the same exact angle, pausing before answering in the same exact way, smiling with their mouth, but never with their eyes. Real people change with context. Imposters repeat. You also notice how they use your own words against you in conversations. Not because they understood them, but because they were mimicking your emotional intelligence to hide their own lack of authentic depth. They never asked real questions. They only mirrored yours. And sometimes when they thought you weren't paying attention, their face would go blank, completely blank, like the mask powering down for a second. No emotion, no micro-expression, no human tension in the muscles, just nothing. Then there were the memory slips. They recalled events that never happened or forgot details only they should have remembered. Not lies, glitches. Their emotional responses never matched their stories. Their reactions were always half a second behind the moment, like someone updating a character model in real time. And when you started pulling away, they panicked, not emotionally, but energetically. A real person would ask what's wrong. This one studied your behavior instead. You weren't dealing with an inconsistent human. You were dealing with something running out of borrowed identity. Chosen one, every shapeshifter eventually reaches a moment where they lose control of the disguise. And for you, that moment came on a night you still replay in your head because something about it didn't add up. You were talking to them. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just normal conversation, when suddenly their expression froze in place. Not like someone thinking, not like someone zoning out, but like a system locking up. Their eyes lost focus for a split second and then refocused too sharply, like a camera lens snapping into position. Even their posture shifted. Their shoulders dropped a little too quickly, their jaw tightened without reason, and the tone of their voice changed mid-word as if another version of them took over mid-sentence. You felt your stomach drop, not because you were afraid, but because you recognized instinctively that you weren't talking to the same person you were talking 10 seconds earlier. Something inside them misfired. Something in the disguise lagged. And in that instant, the mask slipped. You saw a look that didn't belong to the face they were wearing. It wasn't anger. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't exhaustion. It was empty, like a being that's been pretending to be human, suddenly forgetting how to operate the body it borrowed. The room felt colder. The energy shifted. You even felt pressure behind your forehead, the kind you get when something unnatural is in your presence. And just as fast as it appeared, they reset, blinked twice, shook their head lightly, fake smiled, and pretended nothing happened. But you knew. Humans don't glitch like that. Humans don't freeze, transform, then reboot. That moment wasn't your imagination. It was the system behind the mass malfunctioning, because your awareness had gotten too sharp. For the first time, it realized you were starting to see it. Chosen one, the confirmation didn't come from fear or paranoia. It came from information, something you stumbled across, something you overheard, something you read, or something that appeared in your path exactly when your intuition needed validation. Maybe it was a message that wasn't meant for you, but somehow reached you. Maybe it was a screenshot, an old note, a voice recording, a social media slip, or a document someone forgot to hide. Whatever it wasn't random. It connected dots you weren't supposed to connect. You realized this person had patterns of behavior, movements, interactions, and timelines that didn't match the identity they showed you. Their story had gaps. Their reactions never lined up with reality. And the more you looked at it, the more it felt like someone was trying to blend in rather than simply live their life. You saw evidence that they were studying you, not loving you, not supporting you, not even disliking you. Studying you. You noticed messages crafted too perfectly, responses designed to trigger specific emotions, and conversations that sounded rehearsed, like they were testing different versions of themselves to see which one you responded to best. That's not emotional immaturity. That's infiltration. You found traces of conversations they had with others where their tone was completely different, almost like they were switching into another persona depending on who they were talking to. And the more you examined these inconsistencies, the clearer it became. This wasn't just someone pretending socially. This was someone operating with an agenda, someone adjusting their identity to your behavior, someone who should not have known certain details about you, but did. The evidence didn't scream at you, it whispered, but the whisper was enough. It confirmed what your spirit had been trying to tell you from the beginning. The person close to you isn't who they appear to be, and the disguise is thinning. I want you to pause for a moment and acknowledge something most people never realize about themselves. You notice a shapeshifter because your spirit is operating on a higher frequency than theirs. That's why you caught the glitches, the inconsistencies, the energy misfires. Awareness like that isn't random. It's a sign of spiritual evolution. But with higher awareness comes one truth. When you see the enemy clearly, you're meant to separate from it. Energetic parasites don't leave quietly. When you stop feeding them, they panic, cling, manipulate, and try to pull you back into confusion. This is the moment where chosen ones either rise into their next level or fall back into the cycle. If your spirit has been telling you, something around me is not aligned, then this is your signal to initiate a clean break in your energy field. That's what the $20 seed represents. Not a transaction, not charity, not obligation, but conscious decision to close the energetic doorways shapeshifters use to access your life. It's you saying, I choose clarity over manipulation. I choose alignment over imitation. I choose truth over illusion. The universe doesn't respond to fear. It responds to decisiveness. Planting a $20 seed is symbolic. But symbolism is how spiritual realms track your intent. It marks the moment you stop absorbing the shapeshifter's influence and start reclaiming your power. Only do it if you feel that pull in your chest, that quiet voice saying, yes, this is for me. That inner confirmation is the only sign you need. Chosen one. The more your awareness sharpened, the more their disguise began to malfunction around you. It wasn't your imagination. Your energy was exposing them. Every time you walked into the room, their posture shifted unnaturally fast, like someone preparing a pose they forgot to hold. Their breathing pattern changed, too shallow one moment and too steady the next, as if they were manually adjusting it. You started noticing how their aura felt mismatched with their words. They said things humans say, but the emotional frequency behind the words didn't match. Real people feel before they speak. Shapeshifters speak before they feel. You also began seeing how they struggled to keep up with your intuition. When you predicted things, they flinched. When you sensed lies, their face froze. When you called out inconsistencies, their eyes followed a strange pattern. First confusion, then calculation, then an emotion that didn't belong to them. They weren't reacting to the situation. They were reacting to your perception of them. And that's when it hit you. They weren't failing because they were sloppy. They were failing because your frequency is too high for them to imitate. You operate on instinct, on authenticity, on real connection. Something they can copy for a moment but never sustain. You notice how they became uncomfortable when you were calm, how they scrambled when you were centered, how they got irritated when you were confident. That's because shapeshifters can only mirror states of being. They cannot generate them. The more grounded you became, the more their mask cracked. The more self-aware you grew, the more they lost control over their identity. They couldn't sync with your spirit anymore. You outgrew their disguise, and they knew it long before you did. Chosen one, once your spirit detects a shapeshifter, reality itself starts rearranging to show you what your intuition already knows. You began noticing strange synchronicities whenever this person was near. Lights flickering, electronics acting up, conversations around you shifting tone, your body reacting before your mind understood why. Your nervous system wasn't anxious. It was alert, running diagnostics in the background, warning you that something in your environment didn't belong to you. And the strangest thing? Every time you pulled your energy back, the universe responded instantly. People you barely knew started hinting at things. Accidental comments slipped out. Small truths leaked through the cracks, and events lined up in ways too precise to be coincidence. Even your dreams changed. You started seeing symbols, shadows, distorted versions of someone familiar, because your subconscious is always the first to detect a threat that wears a friendly face. And the shapeshifter felt it happening. They sensed a shift in you. Their behavior grew inconsistent, agitated, unstable. Not because you confronted them, but because you saw them. Shapeshifters don't fear exposure. They fear recognition. They know once a chosen one identifies a disguise, it's over. So they started trying harder to control the narrative. They acted nicer or colder or more emotional than usual. Anything to regain access to your energy. But nothing worked. Your awareness was growing too fast. You weren't confused anymore. You weren't second-guessing yourself anymore. You weren't explaining away the signs. Reality was bending in your favor, pulling the truth out into the open, refusing to let the mask stay on. And deep down, you knew this wasn't paranoia. It was revelation. You were seeing the real them for the first time. Chosen one. You didn't have to accuse them, confront them, or say anything out loud. The moment your energy shifted from confused to aware, they felt it. Shapeshifters don't fear being caught in a lie. They fear losing control of the person they were studying. And the instant you stopped feeding them your trust, your empathy, your innocence, they panicked. It showed in the way they watched you. Too closely, too silently, almost like they were scanning your reactions rather than participating in the moment. They started asking unusual questions, not because they cared, but because they were trying to measure how much you had figured out. Their tone got tense. Their movements became unnatural, forced, like someone struggling to hold a pose that doesn't fit them anymore. They tried switching personalities, softer one day, aggressive the next, distant the day after, hoping one of the versions would still work on you. None of them did, and that scared them more than anything. You weren't responding the way you used to. You weren't confessing your thoughts or explaining your emotions. You weren't giving them the access they relied on to imitate you. Your silence became their biggest enemy. They realized your mind wasn't under their influence anymore. You were watching them instead of letting them watch you. So they escalated. They tried creating emotional tension, small conflicts, manipulative scenarios, not to hurt you, but to test if you'd slip back into the old dynamic. When you didn't, their mask began to malfunction even faster. A shapeshifter can mimic behavior, but they can't fake authenticity when they're standing next to someone who embodies it. That's why they're afraid of you. Not because you can expose them, but because your clarity makes their entire identity collapse. Chosen one revelation never arrives dramatically. It arrives with precision. One moment, you were simply observing them. The next, you realize you weren't observing a person at all. You were observing a pattern pretending to be a person. Every inconsistency, every emotional mismatch, every delayed reaction suddenly made sense. Their identity didn't add up because it was constructed, not lived. Even their presence around you felt intentional, almost strategic, like they were positioned in your life rather than naturally entering it. Think about it. They knew things they shouldn't have known. They reacted to emotions you never expressed. They anticipated your moves, but failed to understand your motives. They imitated your language, but couldn't replicate your intuition. And the most revealing detail, they showed no authentic self when no one was watching. A real person has a baseline. A shapeshifter only has versions. Their face changed subtly depending on the environment. Not dramatically, but in micro-expressions, tension in the jaw, shifts in the eyes, changes in posture that didn't match the moment. You also notice how they adapted differently around different people, like they were customizing themselves to each person's expectations. That isn't social blending. That's identity recalibration. The final piece came when you realized something deeper. Their energy never matched their story. Humans carry emotional residue, pain, joy, history, depth. This person carried none. Their aura felt blank, flat, like someone wearing a costume without understanding the character. And the truth hit you hard. Someone close to you isn't operating through their own identity. They're wearing one. You weren't imagining the emptiness, the glitches, the coldness behind their eyes. You were recognizing the truth. You were never interacting with the real them, because the real them was never there. Chosen one. Before we push into the next phase, you need to understand what this moment actually represents in your spiritual timeline. Most people go their entire lives without ever realizing when an infiltrator, an imitator, or a shapeshifter has been feeding off their energy. But you saw through the disguise. You recognized a glitch. You sense a distortion. That level of awareness is not random. It's evolution. And when you reach a new level of clarity, the universe always presents a choice. Do you step into the new frequency fully, or do you leave the door open for old energies to return? That's where the $50 seed comes in. This isn't about money. It's about a declaration, a marker, a shift. When chosen ones sever energetic access points, they must anchor the separation with intention. A $50 seed is symbolic. It says, I cut ties with hidden enemies. I refuse to be mirrored, drained, imitated, or hunted by energies that do not belong to my path. It's not about buying protection. It's about acknowledging that your spirit has already outgrown the circles where shapeshifters thrive. When you plant a power seed, you're not giving something away. You're reclaiming space that imposters once occupied. You're sealing off the frequency that allowed them near you in the first place. And the universe responds to that kind of decisiveness with acceleration. Doors close faster. Masks fall quicker. Truth reveals itself without resistance. Only do it if you feel that unmistakable pull, the one that says, I'm done with imitation energy. I'm ready for authenticity only. If you feel that sensation rising in your chest, you already know this moment is meant for you. Chosen one. The closer you moved into your authentic energy, the harder it became for the shapeshifter to maintain their disguise. You didn't confront them, accuse them, or try to expose them. You simply became more aligned, and that alone was enough to force their mask to glitch. Your presence started triggering reactions they couldn't control. When you walked into the room, their body language tightened, their eyes shifted too quickly, and their voice changed slightly. Like someone recalibrating an identity they no longer knew how to hold together. They became uncomfortable in conversations that used to be easy for them because you were no longer operating from confusion. You were operating from clarity, and clarity is the one thing a shapeshifter can't mirror. You began noticing that they couldn't hold eye contact with you for long. Not because they were guilty, but because your energy was too strong for a borrowed identity to withstand. Even their attempts to manipulate or distract you fell apart instantly. The tricks they used to use, guilt, chaos, charm, emotional bait, no longer landed. You weren't reacting the same way, and that terrified them. They realized you had shifted dimensions. You were thinking differently, moving differently, and most importantly, seeing differently. And when a chosen one sees clearly, the shapeshifter loses all power. Their disguise depends on your doubt, not your belief. Your confidence made their imitation unstable. Your intuition made their persona unravel. Your silence made their panic grow. They couldn't copy you anymore, and they couldn't influence you anymore. You had evolved beyond the frequency where their disguise could survive. And that's when they understood the truth. You weren't the one being exposed. They were. Chosen one. Once they realized their disguise was breaking in front of you, they didn't walk away. They escalated. Shapeshifters always make one final attempt to regain access when they sense they're losing their hold. This is the phase where their behavior becomes inconsistent and desperate. One moment they acted unusually kind, try to pull you back into the version of yourself that was easier for them to imitate. The next moment, they became cold or irritated, hoping emotional pressure would push you into reacting so they could study you again. None of it worked. You were too aware, too grounded, too elevated. That's when they switched to their last strategy, collapsing into a version of themselves designed to trigger your empathy. They told half-truths. They played victim. They fabricated emotional wounds, not because they felt anything, but because they were mimicking the behavior they observed in real humans. It was a performance built on recycled responses, not genuine experience. You noticed the cracks instantly. Their emotions felt hollow. Their reactions felt delayed. Their words didn't match the frequency of someone in pain. They matched the frequency of someone pretending to be in pain. And when their manipulation didn't work, they tried creating confusion, hoping you'd second-guess your intuition. They asked strange questions. They watched your face too closely. They monitored your tone. They weren't bonding. They were gathering data. But by then, your awareness was too high for any of it to matter. Their last attempt wasn't threatening to you. It was revealing. It proved everything your intuition had been whispering. They weren't losing you. They were losing access to the identity they constructed to stay close to you. And that's when the mask truly began to collapse. Chosen one, now that everything is unfolded, the final truth becomes impossible to ignore. The shapeshifter was never drawn to you by coincidence. You were targeted for one reason. Your energy carries something they cannot replicate, cannot steal, and cannot survive without. You operate with a level of intuition, authenticity, and spiritual clarity that destabilizes beings who rely on imitation to exist. Your presence exposes deception, not because you try to, but because your vibration forces false identities to malfunction. That's why this shapeshifter inserted themselves so close to you. They weren't studying you out of curiosity. They were studying you out of necessity. Without a powerful, authentic human to copy, their disguise weakens. They mimic your language because your voice holds influence. They mirrored your emotions because your empathy carries resonance. They tracked your movements because your path aligns with destiny. But the more you evolved, the harder it became for them to maintain the illusion. Your growth outpaced their ability to imitate. Your clarity outshined their deception. Your spiritual armor made their tactics useless. And their greatest fear became reality. You outgrew the frequency where their mask had power. That's why the universe allowed you to see the truth, not to scare you, but to confirm that your intuition is now operating at its highest level. The closer you come to your real purpose, the more disguised forces attempt to infiltrate your life, not to destroy you, but to siphon from you. And when you finally recognize them, the connection dissolves instantly, because shapeshifters can only survive in confusion. But you've stepped into clarity. And clarity is their death sentence. The cosmic reason you were targeted is the same reason you survived. You were never the prey. You were always the awakening force they couldn't control. Chosen one, if you made it to the end of this message, then you're not here by chance. You're here because something in your spirit recognized itself in every word. That's the mark of someone who is stepping out of illusions, stepping out of imitation environments, stepping out of frequencies where shapeshifters can hide. And when a chosen one reaches this level of awareness, the universe always asks for one thing: a declaration that you're ready for the next level. Not a prayer, not a wish, a declaration. That's what the $100 destiny seed symbolizes. It's not a payment. It's not a donation. It's not a transaction. It's an act of spiritual alignment, a way of saying, I sever every false attachment and step fully into the identity they try to mimic. When you plant that kind of seed, you mark the moment where you leave imitation timelines behind and step into the one written for you since birth. A $100 seed tells the universe you're done entertaining shapeshifters. You're done carrying infiltrators. You're done letting false identities orbit your life. It says you're ready for protection that can't be breached, clarity that can't be manipulated, and elevation that can't be imitated. Only chosen ones feel the pull to take action at this level. If you feel that pressure in your chest, that deep recognition, that internal yes, it's because this moment is meant for you. Your next chapter starts when you claim it.